Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Culture, Leadership, and Impact webinar. I am BJ Jungmann. I'm the Vice Chair of the Great Lakes Division of the IFC. On behalf of the Great Lakes Division Board of Directors, we'd like to thank you for attending today's session. I have a few logistical items to cover before I turn the webinar over to our presenter. First, I would ask you to find the chat function in the upper right-hand corner and introduce yourself in the chat with your name, your fire department, your role, and what drew you to this session. The audio is being broadcast using a VoIP technology through your computer speakers or headset. Please make sure your speakers or headset are turned on and the volume is turned up. Audience microphones have been muted. If you experience any technical difficulties, please contact IFC support at webinars@ifc.org or via the chat function. In the upper right corner of your screen, you will also find the chat and a Q&A menu next to it. You are encouraged to share your comments and submit questions for the speakers. I would ask that you use the Q&A tab for any questions so we can keep track of what has been answered and not. If the presenter will have handouts at the end of the session, and that will be in the upper right-hand corner on another tab. You'll receive a link with today's recorded session via email, along with a brief survey. We would like you to let us know about your experience today. I'm very excited to introduce our speaker today, Amber Peterson. Amber is the managing partner at Peterson and Perm Associates. Amber approaches her work in organizational development with a robust and lively spirit, giving special attention to how culture, professional development, and employee wellness intersect. Having come from the public safety field, Amber's primary mission is to help fire, police, corrections, and government entities provide their employees with a productive and engaging work environment. Her services include assessing workplace culture, facilitating strategic planning, guiding leadership development workshops, and coaching staff on increasing their wellness and the wellness of their peers. I'd like to thank Amber for her willingness to share her expertise with all of us today, and I will turn it over to Amber for her presentation. Welcome, Amber. And I think she's having a technical glitch here. I see everybody is putting in their names and roles over there. I appreciate that. It's good to see folks from across the country. Looks like Amber's logging back in here. Welcome, Amber.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. We had our first technology gremlin enter the fray today. Yep. That's okay. Now that we got that out of the way, though. All right. Thanks, Chief, for passing it along. I really appreciate that. Welcome, everybody. I heard as I was coming on that we have people tuning in from around the country. That's wonderful. Welcome from earlier to a little later in your day. We appreciate you being here with us, even people from around the world. So very, very great. Thank you. Just know that we're going to be monitoring the chat if Chief hasn't said so yet, but watching for your questions. Please put them in the Q&A, though, as he said, the Q&A tab, if you have questions. And we're going to start today. So thanks for entering your info. Just a quick little bit about me. My name is Amber Peterson, of course, and I am centrally located in the U.S. In Minnesota. So I am about 7 hours south of the Canadian border near Minneapolis, Minnesota, just south of that. I'm from Peterson and Permy Associates, so I'm the Peterson of the Permy. And a little bit about me, my background. So I am actually from the law enforcement world. So sorry, I'll say up front, and I get it on the emergency end. I get responding to those emergencies. And I was in a sworn role for about 7.5 years before I realized that my larger calling was to help my peers be more well. Because of the things that I experienced, my peers experienced, I watched other city employees experience, including our fire officers, and the critical incidents that we went through and weren't quite able to bounce back from like we planned or wanted to or expected to. So I left the sworn law enforcement world to then go into helping public safety folks be more well. And for the last 5 years now, I've been doing this on a grand scale. You're here today for culture. This is part of my work, of what I do, also strategic planning and helping organizations support their employees really well. So with that, let's get started. Our objectives for today. So you'll see really quickly on the side It says type your questions in the Q&A tab throughout our session. Please do that. And if we need to, we'll stop and pause and answer a question in a moment. Otherwise, today, we're going to look at organizational culture. What is it? How can leaders, you guys, impact your culture? What strategies can you use? Can you put at your disposal in order to shift culture how you need it to go? And then what are some differences that we're talking about? I'll talk about this later, but constructive and defensive strategies. Last, we're going to stop really throughout the whole thing. We're talking about people leadership here, but we're going to pause for that at the end and hear some stories from Chief Jungbin. Now, I am high engagement, meaning that I love to hear from you guys. So we're going to do a poll right here. What is organizational culture? You have a few options to pick from. Pick any that, as many as apply for you. And thanks, Nan, I see you pop that up. So we'll give folks a few seconds to answer. Pick as many as it makes sense for you. So what is organizational culture? Take a stab at that. Okay, I see some results coming on in. If you're curious about the results of the poll, next to the chat and the Q&A tabs, up in that upper right-hand corner, it says polls. You can click on that and you can look too. We'll give it just maybe like 5 more seconds, Nan, and then we'll close it up. For anybody that's internet is lagging behind today. Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so organizational culture. The vast majority of people said it's our department's values and what we expect of each other. You know, both are correct. I would say more so that it's what we expect of each other, which I'll explain here in a moment. And your department's values really figure into this. It's a big part of the foundation. So what is culture? It is the way we are expected to do things around here. You think about culture like your organization is like a tree, and culture is all of the deep roots that are in the bottom of that tree, deep in the ground, and these expectations that we have of each other. And what we know from the research is that culture is 8 to 15 years old, at least. There might be some new roots that are kind of near the surface, that are new expectations that are being cultivated, but many of them extend way far down. And I bet that as we talk about expectations in the culture, right, that there are probably some expectations in your culture that extend way, maybe all the way to the creation of your department, if not working memory. Now, you hear a lot about culture, but climate. We hear a lot about climate factors. If you've ever done the Gallup survey, that has to do with, or brought it into your agency, that has to do a lot with climate factors. So the difference here, because they're different, but they fit together as a part of this puzzle. The difference being that climate is more like the leaves on the tree. It's more like the attitudes and perceptions that change day to day, or at least more quickly than expectations and culture. So climate, a couple examples as you can see on the screen: clarity of the mission. How clear is the mission to me today as a member of the organization? Can I recite the mission? Maybe, maybe not, but do I understand it? And do I understand how to put it into practice? Maybe I've been getting some conflicting messages lately that have shifted my perspective. What's my satisfaction and motivation right now in my job? And how engaged am I? Am I involved in my job? Do I know the strategies of the department? And am I following along and playing into those strategies? Now, a couple examples of cultural expectations are things like take on challenging tasks. If I am expected to take on challenging tasks, then I am expected to be engaged, take maybe moderate risks that aren't dumb, right? I think a lot of us think of risk as dumb things, but risks as in maybe I'm going to try a new strategy in a safe environment. Maybe I'm going to teach something new or try a new practice. Take on challenging risks or tasks. Then it might be plan ahead. Strategic planning is a great example of that here in our department, we plan ahead. Now, cultural expectations could also be things like don't rock the boat or point out all of the flaws. So the point being with these is that the climate and culture are two pieces of this puzzle, and these aren't always spoken. This is the thing. With expectations, with culture, a lot of it is actually unspoken. So we need to be on the lookout for it and know what we're hearing and know what's expected of people, because we all know what's expected in our organizations, even if we can't put words to it. So how do we create culture? How do we change culture? Well, culture is built through shared learning and mutual experience. Meaning, if you think back to your last call, last big call, what did y'all learn together? And how will you act differently out of that? Or are you already acting differently out of what you learned from that call? That in and of itself, of what you learned together, could be a change in your culture that changes an expectation that maybe in 5, 8, 10 years down the line, people are going to say, well, this is just how we do business around here. It's not something we're learning like we are right now, right? We're not necessarily just learning it, we do it. We live it. This is our culture. Now, I'm going to show you this circle graph here, and it's a way to think about culture. I'm not going to dive too far into the nitty gritty here because this is about big organizational culture. Later on, I'll make sure we get a link in the chat around a video that I have where I dive in a little bit deeper for public safety in each of these areas, but as a whole. So a way to think about culture. This is from Human Synergistics. They've been doing research around culture now for about 50 years and have a really good grasp on what is organizational culture and how do leaders impact it. And you'll see a lot of these graphs here today. Now, from their research, they found that culture generally lands or falls into 12 different categories. You'll see there's 12 different pieces of this pie here, but they group into 3 different areas. Now, the top area, the constructive cultures, those are cultures that promote goal setting, achievement, growth, learning, teamwork, collaboration. They are the go team go type expectations that we have in our organizations. Now, these types of organizations in our public safety sector, this is where you are retaining your employees. If your culture is strong in this area, you're retaining your employees. Your recruitment is up, maybe compared to other agencies around in the area. You also have a lot of alignment around the goals in your organization, and people are bringing their brains to work in addition to their bodies, right? Not just arms and legs to fill a rig. It's their whole selves, all of their ideas. Now, if we keep going down the circle, there's that green area in the bottom right, and that's the passive defensive cultural expectations, the styles. Now, these have to do with if an organization is really strong in this area, it is much less effective. It's about conformity, rigidity, lack of team member accountability and initiative. This is where we can't make decisions. There's a lot of bureaucracy here in the public sector. If this is the strongest part or the strongest chunk of styles. Now, this might be that, well, I'm going to tell you something up front to your face that I think you want to hear, but I'm going to do something instead back here. Or maybe I'm just going to push decision upwards. Or I might even just totally avoid any new types of activities at work. I'm just here to do my job. Don't ask me to do anything new. I'm just here, and then I'm going to go home. Those are those kinds of cultural expectations. Now, the last big cluster here on the left-hand side, the red, the aggressive defensive, that's about internal competition. It's pointing out the flaws and mistakes, short-term emphasis versus long-term effectiveness. So this is where, as we're in the green, it's about who do we please to survive around here. Now we talk more about tasks and what do I have to do, and it gets very competitive, very, like it says, aggressive. Like, I'm going to point out all the flaws and mistakes around me because it's expected that I do that. It's also expected that my unit or my rig or my crew is going to compete with that other one over there because we have to get the recognition, or everything has to be absolutely perfect. All of the T's crossed and the I's dotted. So we'll keep talking about this, but now I'd like to hear from you guys again. So my business partner, Kathy Permy, and I have been building a public safety culture database for these last 5 to 7 years now. And what we have is a really good representation of, in public safety, what does an ideal culture look like versus what a current culture looks like. So the ideal being right over here, right? What do we ideally want as a part of our culture versus what do we currently have? So I'm wondering what differences you notice, and I'd love to hear that in the chat. We have some work to do. It looks spot on. Trust. Interesting. Thanks, folks, for pouring in on that. Okay. Really quick, Nan, someone says that they're experiencing some sporadic connection. Is anybody else finding that? Maybe just something to keep an eye on. I'm seeing a lot more comments come on in here. Need more blue, open mindsets, very insightful, more conventions. We've always done it this way. Defensive versus ops. Yeah. Desire to serve, but a hesitancy to take new actions. Yes. Okay. Well, back to the Tim. Tim, I hope that you have a better connection coming on in. Thanks, you guys, for your comments. Yeah, there's a change needed, right? There's a little bit of a difference here. Here's the good news, you guys. In that public safety, we know we want these really great expectations in our cultures. It's beautiful to know that this is what we want. If we didn't want those blue parts, that top cluster, we'd be a little worried. We'd be concerned. So it's good to see. Now you're right. We do have some work to do because most of the time, at least in this average, right, between I think it's 9 different organizations, it's pretty defensive. The culture is pretty defensive. There is some blue there, which does make a difference, I will say. And there's some work to do. So thanks for pouring into that. If you do have questions, remember, pop them in the Q&A. Okay, let's keep going. Now, you saw where we're at on average, but how can we shift this? And it truly starts with how leaders impact the culture. You guys, you can have a huge impact on the culture. Or you think about back, maybe a leader in your organization who had an outsized impact, let's say, on the culture, left a large mark in some way, shape, or form. Maybe constructive, maybe defensive, or if you want to say maybe good, maybe bad. We impact the culture. So lots of things go into creating culture. Now, you saw the picture of the ideal culture, right? The average. This isn't that, but you get an idea. And then we have the current culture over on the other side. It's this middle stuff that makes a huge difference. All the structures, the systems, the technologies, the skills and qualities, everything that makes up the organization, that builds it, is in that middle ground. That is what helps create the current culture. And today we're talking about leaders, you guys. We're talking about your skills and qualities, what you bring to the table that impacts your troops. So now here's that circumplex again, but we're going to talk about it in the sense of now how leaders impact culture and how the difference is here. So I realize I have handout on there, and I don't think we have a handout for folks right now, but you do have the slides at the end. So hold on tight to that. Okay, let's look at this though. So we've got the 12 different slices of the pie. And as let's start at the top again, because this is really, we'll look at the expectations. This is really about how leaders behave with others and communicate their expectations. Remember, how I impact the culture, not necessarily what I do. We'll get there about strategies, but it's about how I impact the culture. Now, for this one, it's really small on my screen, so I'm going to blow it up over here. We talk about, and I'll talk you through this in case it's small on your screen too. We've got achievement. If you're looking at the blue at the top, achievement is around motivating people to strive for excellence. It's really about the goals and really about the motivation around getting the task done, but so well, right, that we are striving for that excellence. And we know what excellence means, and we know how to achieve it, right, in a constructive culture. Now, as a leader, you're motivating people to strive for that excellence. Keep shifting over to that 12 o'clock position. That's called self-actualization. That's the height of satisfaction. Now that is around, as a leader, expecting people to maintain their personal integrity and personal standards. Now, look here that it's about, I expect people to maintain their integrity, to maintain their personal standards. And as a leader, I'm very clear about those expectations. People know. Again, we'll get to the strategies. So the next one down, 1 o'clock is humanistic encouraging. That's encouraging people. So my people, I am encouraging them to show concerns for the needs of others, to help coach and mentor and guide them. And if we keep going, that last blue one, the last one at the top, affiliative, it's about leading people to cooperate with each other. So really expecting from people that they are going to cooperate versus compete and behaving as such. Keep going around the circle and we hit those green areas. Now that bottom right cluster. And the first one is approval. Expecting people to go along with others. Just go along to get along. Don't argue with them, right? That's my expectation and people know it. As where if I keep going down conventionals about the rules and it's pressuring people to accept the status quo. Well, that's just the way it is. I saw somebody in the comments that put like always doing what we've always done. And this is it, right? Round the rules. Now keep going and we hit dependent. That's at 5 o'clock position. And it's requiring people to follow orders even when they have a better idea. Even when they have a better idea, I'm still expecting that they just follow the orders. And by the way, some of these expectations might not be, I might not realize that I am putting them out there. I might not be explicitly saying these expectations to people, but this is how I impact them. This is how I push them to work. So keep that in mind. The last one down at the bottom of the green is called avoidance. And for that, it's leading people to play it safe and waiting for others to act first. Now you can see where this might get in the way, right? If I'm expecting people to wait, that might get in the way of some of the things we need to do for our jobs or internally with each other. Now, on that left-hand side, the aggressive defensive styles, oppositional is that 7 o'clock. And that is leading people to be critical and hard to impress. So that's the expectation, right? Be critical, be hard to impress, point out all the flaws and mistakes. And I'm expecting people to do that. And that's how people respond to my leadership. I'm impacting them in that way. 8 o'clock is around power, and that's driving people to act forcefully. Now, you might be like, well, people have to act confidently. Confidence is up in that blue area. Forcefully, where we are, for lack of a better term, aggressive about it, right? That lives in this part. 9 o'clock, second to last one here, is about prompting people to turn the job into a contest, which again, you might say, Amber, that's not such a bad thing. We want people to strive for excellence, remember? And I'd say, yes. And it gets in the way when we start expecting people to compete with each other internally, and then they're not cooperating with each other. So it can get in the way. Last one, perfectionistic, leading people to de-emphasize feelings and focus on the task. And I know, I'm there with you all. De-emphasizing feelings, I get it. We can't always be in the feelings with our jobs in public safety. And we also have to attend to the people side of people. And we can't always just focus on the task. So this doesn't end up serving us in the end. Now, I have talked for a little while once again, and I'd like to hear from you once again. So keeping in mind what we just covered here, what's an example of an action that a leader could take to drive a constructive culture? So think constructive, that's at the top. Pop it into the chat. We'll keep an eye out here. Remember, constructive is around help motivating people to strive for excellence, to expect them to maintain their personal standards, encouraging them to show concerns for others, leading them to cooperate, things like that. So what's an example? Create a learning environment. Yep. Thank you. Delegation. Yes. Recognize high performance. You know what's beautiful about delegation is when you expect the people underneath you to take on tasks and start to learn. You're really helping them learn so they can grow, and maybe someday they can be chief, or they can be deputy chief or assistant chief. It's succession. Great. Lots of comments. Excellent. Thanks, guys. Provide opportunities for professional development, clear statement of goals, be the person you expect them to be. Oh, I like that one. Thank you. Model the desired behavior. Yes. And you have to, I'm going to challenge that slightly to say you have to know what you desire of the behaviors, because so much of what we do lies, if you think about the iceberg that everybody's heard of this, right? We're only aware of so much of what we do or what we say, and we have so many thoughts that we're not even aware of. So we have to know exactly what we want in order to be able to model it really, really well. So that's where like assessing culture can be helpful, or knowing what your ideal culture is. But wonderful. Thank you. Okay. Set clear expectations and verbalize the why. Yes. Letting go and letting them do. Let them do the work. They have to trip sometimes in order to learn. Empower them. Yes. Show they care about their well-being and their, yep. Professional development, delegation, showing trust, be the change. Love it. Yes, you guys got it. This is exactly it. These are some of these actions that help drive a constructive culture, the way that leaders can impact their culture in order to make it more constructive. We will get into specific strategies as we go too, but let's keep working this. So now, pause, go into the circle here, and what are some examples of actions that a leader could take to drive a passive defensive culture? Passive defensive culture. Now remember, this was around expecting people to go along with others, pressuring people around the status quo, just follow orders, and play it safe. Oh, easy to say, hard to do. I get it, Jess. Thank you. Yes, it is. It's challenging. Driving the constructive culture, and we got to have a good team with us, and be kind to ourselves on the journey, because it is a journey. It's behavior change. And behavior change is not always easy. But what are some examples? Ooh, shut up and do. Dismiss people's ideas. Yeah. That might be a little bit more on the aggressive side, but it definitely around that follow orders part. Yes. Having a closed mind. Yes. Micromanagement. Micromanagement can also be more often to the red or the left-hand side, but it's but not delegating, right? Not delegating is part of that. My way or the highway. Complain about the other shift. Oh yeah. Especially Tony has the comment, complain about the other shift, especially not to their face. When you play nice to their face, but then you complain about them in the meeting after the meeting, that's that green, that's that passive defensive. Oh, you're new. Oh, you are new, so you don't know, maybe is what I'm reading into that. Don't listen, close your door, sit back, let things happen, ignore conflict, fixed mindset. Ignoring conflict is a big one of this area, very much so. Discount empowerment. Focus on the rules too much and not doing the right thing. Yes, exactly. When we hide behind the rules in an organization and say, I'd love to help you, but the rules say that I can't, stuff like that, that's passive defensive culture. And as a leader, if you're modeling that and saying, well, I'd love to give you that new role, this organization, but HR says I can't, like stuff like that, hiding behind the rules. Absolutely. Okay, you guys got this. So now let's, of course, I bet you can call it. We're going to go to the aggressive defensive culture. So what are some examples of this one? And if you can't read it, if it's too small on your screen, leading people to be critical and hard to impress. Remember, pointing out those flaws. Driving people to act forcefully. Prompt people to turn the job into a contest. Leading people to de-emphasize feelings and focus on the task. What the chief wants. That's a good one, Mark. Do as I say and not as I do is definitely in that red area, in there. Withholding trust. Oh, not my job. Not my job can sometimes be in that green, where we say that's somewhat of the rules, or even in that dependent, that 5 o'clock, where we say, well, I wish I could help you, but my boss says, and as a leader, you could say, well, you know what? It's not really in the job description, so, you can't really do that. Okay. But we're talking about the red. Okay, playing favorites, not acknowledging positive achievements. Yes, penalty versus reward. Absolutely. More heavy on the penalty. We are going to do better than that shift. Absolutely. That's a thing. Thank you guys. Because I said so. I like that one. Lack of information sharing, constantly applying pressure for better performance. Yes. Stay in your lane. Okay. Yeah, you guys got it. Numbers only person. The first answer is always no. Adopting an approach, emphasizing discipline rather than learning. I don't care what you think. Yeah, this is all very much transactional. Thank you, Rocco. Absolutely. This all lives in this area. Yes. So now I bet you guys want to hear about some of the strategies. How do we start impacting culture in a way that we want to be? What are some strategies we can deploy? Let's talk about these. So leadership strategies, especially from your level, if you're top level, right? Even if you're in the middle ground, if you're a captain or a lieutenant or something in the middle ground, your title, you can still deploy these, right? This doesn't have to just be the chief or assistant chiefs. So there are prescriptive strategies and there are restrictive strategies. Here's what I want to say really quickly as we read through these, that neither are necessarily good or bad. They're constructive or more defensive, and we do need all of them at different times potentially. So it's really, and I'll talk about how many. It's a 3-to-1 divide, but we'll talk more about that, but without judgment, these are what they are, right? Prescriptive being guiding and directing the behavior and activities toward the goals and opportunities and methods, what we want people to do, helping them understand what we want them to do. As where restrictive strategies are just that, they're restricted, they constrain, they prohibit the behaviors and the activities of employees with respect to goals, opportunities, and methods. So what that means is I'm going to talk a lot about what I don't like, and I'm going to keep you from doing the thing, and really just focus on the don't do that instead of saying do this instead. So balance matters in this. It is a 3-to-1. So I'm sure you've heard somewhere in passing that, we need 10 positive comments to every 1 negative. Well, your leadership and how you impact your culture is no different. You do need a lot more prescriptive approaches versus restrictive approaches in order to have a constructive impact. So let me say that one more time. For you to have a constructive impact, so think that blue, constructive impact on your organization, you need to use prescriptive strategies or approaches more often than restrictive. And typically this in the research says it's a 3-to-1 balance. We need 3 prescriptive to 1 restrictive. Okay. Let's talk about what these are and what the research says. So some of this, don't worry about the words on there. I'll talk you through it. Some of it's a little bit small, but might be for you. But look at the left-hand side first. So here's what the research shows, that the most prescriptive leaders, so think about prescriptive, right? I'm telling you what I want you to be doing and really guiding and directing toward. This is their impact. This is how they are rated by their peers, by who's managing them, as well as their direct reports. This is what comes out for them, right? Way more constructive impact. They're having a much more constructive impact while using those prescriptive strategies. Now, those little bars that you see with the little arrows or the little triangles, that's around leadership effectiveness. Now, when you do a 360 like this, a 360 assessment, which means that people around you are taking this assessment about you, and you just not doing this yourself, even though that's part of it, but a lot of people taking it about you, they're also going to rate your effectiveness in your organization, in your personal life, and how it's all balanced. And you see it's trending over on, you can't see the numbers, but it's trending over to the right, which is really good. It shows that these leaders are a lot more effective according to their people within their culture. As where, if we look on the other side, if we look at, I can draw this right here. If you look at this one on the right-hand side, this is the more restrictive leaders who are using more restrictive strategies. And look at the difference in their circumplex and how their circle graph pops up. This is how their direct reports, their peers, and those who manage them, this is how they say they are impacting the culture. It's much more defensive. And those little triangles over on the right-hand side, they're much more in the middle, saying that they're less effective than the folks who were using prescriptive strategies. So I think you get the point. Let's talk about the actual strategies that are at our fingertips. Now, these are from Human Synergistics, once again, and they are what they have brought out in the research on what types of strategies can leaders use to change the impact of the culture. So, envisioning how the vision and philosophy of leaders is shared with others. And by the way, you are going to get these slides, so you'll get all of these little descriptions. Okay. But it's about the vision. How do you share the vision? How do you share with others about your leadership philosophies? Role modeling, getting the point across of what behaviors are desired or not, how you share that. Setting examples, right? Mentoring, how do you give direction to others around learning? Stimulating thinking. Do we focus on brand new ways? Do we focus on the old ways of doing business, or something in between? Referring. Yes, Sean, I see the question about the recording. You will get a link. Referring, references to how people behaved and set an example. So how do you tell stories about what people do in the organization and how that affects others, how that affects the culture, what we like and we don't like around here? Monitoring, focusing on what is being done right versus wrong, providing feedback, evaluations of people's activities and performance. Reinforcing, it's about reinforcing or deterring behavior. Influencing, are you allowing people to use their influence on you, on others in the organization? How's that done? And then creating a setting, the behaviors and developments of others. It's about the environment, and how we foster that. So I picked out 3 with Chief Jungman's help, actually, and we thought these 3 would speak to you the most, and we would dive in a little bit. So, leadership strategy around envisioning. Now, remember, this is about the vision, and we want a 3-to-1 balance. So the three prescriptive that we want the 3-to-1, right? The prescriptive strategies on the left-hand side are about having a sense of direction for the organization and its members. So you as a leader, you have a sense of direction. Communicating a clear vision of how things should be. How do you talk about the vision? How clear is it? Is it, well, we just want a good department? Or is it extremely clear where we have it laid out, and this is the type of department we'd like to have, and these are the people we're serving in this way? It's very clear. And then sharing with others your philosophy of management, not making this such a mystical or magical process, right? You share. Those 3 are right on. Awesome. Thanks, Jerry. I agree. Now the 3-to-1. Remember, it's 3-to-1 for a reason. It's not 3-to-0. It's 3-to-1. We want to do those 3 things more to these 1 over here, about being clear what you don't like, viewing certain behaviors as a matter of principle as inappropriate, expressing strong opinions against certain ways of doing business. Now, you might look at those and say, look, I need to do those sometimes. And I would say you are spot on. You do. You do need to be clear sometimes about what you don't like. And if you only talk about what you don't like, that's going to hurt you. And it's not going to help your organization. It's going to change your impact. So let's keep going. I have 2 more examples for you, 3-to-1, and then we're going to do another poll, because you guys know I like hearing from you. Stimulating thinking. The 3 is inspiring others to creatively translate problems into opportunities. Creatively translate problems into opportunities. It's stimulating creativity in the pursuit of organizational goals. So creativity, right? This is a theme here. And encouraging people to challenge assumptions and look at things in new ways. So stimulating thinking. Think about this one. We want people to think in new ways and not just same old, same old. Even though sometimes that does help. Remember, 3-to-1, not 3-to-0. Because if you look down at the other side, servant leadership, intentional servant leadership. Nice. Yes. Favoring practical, down-to-earth solutions over unique or visionary ideas. That's under that 1 category. Emphasizing sequential or linear thinking and the need to justify every step, and confining problem solving to conventional proven approaches. Now, sometimes we have to say, what's the proven approach here? We need to go with something that's low risk. Let's think risk management here. Absolutely. And you got to stimulate the thinking and get people thinking in new directions, and allow them to use their creativity, because we know from the research that when we stimulate that thinking, when we stimulate the creativity of our people, they feel more fulfilled and satisfied and engaged. If you want to keep them, these are some things you need to be doing. Now, last example. Monitoring, what is that? That is showing an interest when people improve work processes or procedures. Oh, I'll get to your comment in a second, Sherry. Okay, showing an interest when people improve work processes or procedures. Then it's noticing when things are done exceptionally well and demonstrating concern for how things get done, not just what gets done. So it's really, do you hear the people leadership part of this in all of these, but really hear about showing interest, noticing, concern. Yes, we have to allow them to blossom a bit, right? And then encourage them along the way. And still, sometimes we need to employ the strategies of noticing when people act in ways that differ from what's expected. Now, I would argue that maybe that's not such a bad thing always, and a lot of times it's not as helpful as the other three. Practicing close supervision, and then focusing on exceptions, deviations, inappropriate behaviors, really focusing, right? And saying, like, this is all we're talking about. Now, 3 to 1, not 3 to 0. Sometimes you have to do those things. So a comment came in about it's detrimental to encourage creativity and never take it. Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm going to go back for a second because I think this is important. So when we talk about stimulating thinking and creativity, it is, as leaders, we understand that you can't always take all of the ideas, right? A lot of ideas are going to come in, especially if you have a really engaged staff. And it's about the delivery of letting them know when you're not going to take their suggestions, when you're not going to take their ideas, and giving them the why. It's about the follow through, and you can make a very different impact, a differing impact if you follow through versus if you don't follow through. So just to that comment about encouraging creativity and never taking it, there's sometimes when you can't take it and you got to follow through and say why. So, okay, with that, I'd like to hear from you guys again. So we're going to pop up another poll. This time it's which of these strategies could you make the biggest impact with, the greatest impact within your organization? And select all of them that apply. Which ones are like your big ones? What could you take and run with? We'll give people a moment to fill this one in. All right, I'm not seeing any results come in, but that might be just how my thing is set up. So Nan, I'll leave it up to you if you want to give it a few more seconds whenever you'd like to close it. They're coming in. Good. Okay. Thank you. Awesome. Which of those strategies could you make the greatest impact with in your organization? All right. Results are in. Okay. The top one, I'm seeing communicating a clear vision of how things should be. Yes, that can have a huge impact, as well as having a sense of direction for the organization and its members. I'm hearing a lot of envisioning here. And let's see. Next one is noticing when things are done exceptionally well. And one more. Inspiring others to creatively translate problems into opportunities. Lovely. Yes. And here's the thing, folks, is that you don't have to overthink this either. It's survey says yes. So it's don't overthink it. What is the smallest action you could take that could have the greatest impact? This is the question. What's the smallest action you could take that would have the greatest impact? So that means that if you take something like, let's see, I'll take the big one here about communicating a clear vision of how things should be. Break that down. How could you do that simply? Make it easy on yourself. Make it easy for the people around you to understand what you're talking about. You don't have to overcomplicate it. I'm empowering you in this. Okay. So with that, let's focus for a moment on the people side of leadership. Thank you for pouring into the Q&A, practice what you preach, saying thank you. Thanks, you guys. Absolutely. Those are important pieces. Yeah. Focusing on the people side of leadership. I'm going to take just a second, and then I'm going to pass it over to Chief Jungmann to talk about a few stories he has. So manage the tasks and lead the people. I heard this quote the other day, and it really stuck with me, because when we think about the circumplex, it is managing the tasks, getting the things done. And sometimes we really get sucked into that as where we need to be leading the people, not managing the people, leading the people, right? Now, I'm going to use an analogy here. You see a couple bridges, and here in Minnesota, we have the High Bridge, and we have the Minnesota River, we have Mississippi River, we have some water here, right? The land of 10,000 lakes. So on the High Bridge, though, you are all, if you're in the top bit of leadership in your organization, you're on the High Bridge. You are responsible to look out, meaning that you have the 10,000 foot view. You're looking up the river and down the river. You're able to see, wow, there's a big barge coming in. We have to plan for that. Or, okay, that one is left. Now we can determine what happened and how did that go well or not. We can see storm fronts coming. We can be aware of other trends that are happening, right? We're responsible for that as top leaders. Now, your ship captains, they're down on the water. They're seeing underneath the bridge. And they have the view right down on the water to say, hey, captain, hey, chief, let's say it that way. Hey, chief, there's some rocks down here. I'm going to have to avoid those. I know you said to take this path, but I see the rocks and I don't want to hear them, or I don't want to hit them. Or, you know, this other boat's not behaving out there. Can you take care of them? They're not staying in their lane. You know, I need your help here. Whatever the case is, they see the challenges, they see the opportunities right down on the water. And it is about delegating down to them and then hearing their feedback in this leading the people part. Delegate down and then hear the feedback up. And what you say and do impacts that culture around you. We've been talking about this, right? So with that, I'm going to pass it on to Chief Jungmann to give you a couple stories.
Thanks, Amber. While I talk through a couple examples here, if anybody has any questions, please put them in the Q&A tab. You've been great about being very active in the chat, but the next tab over is Q&A, so please enter your questions in there. So we have a couple examples, I believe, in our organization. We've worked with Amber and Kathy a bit, and one is on envisioning, and it's our cultural values. How do we focus on what's important? And really, we have 4 C's that have been around longer than I've been in the organization, of character, communication, competence, and collaboration. And really, it helps us define what's important. And when we get new folks that come in, I tell them, here's the cultural values. The chief staff spends an hour and a half with them going through cultural values. And I really tell them there's 2 things that are going to get you in trouble. And it's that if you don't tell us the truth, or if you screw around on going on calls for service. I'm not saying mistakes, but intentionally not going on calls, dodging calls, things like that. And really, it brings into focus what's important. And we spend time talking about what are those 4 values and how do we make people good at their job, and what does success look like in the organization. And then we continue to ingrain it. So we talk about it when we hire them. We talk about it when we're training. And it's not an exercise of can they recite them. It's an exercise of reinforcing what's important to us, right? So when I send out my weekly update, recognizing people that have done good work that fall in line with those values. It's how we respond to calls. It's how we evaluate people as part of our performance review and part of the discussion with their supervisor. And then again at our annual meeting, and it's part of discussions again, and it becomes organic. When people buy in, it's not about what we preach about it. It's more about a discussion so that they understand it and that they feel comfortable with it. And at the end of the day, in all these different formats, we talk about, if you know our cultural values and what we expect, you don't have to know the policy manual word for word. We want you to be familiar with it, but if you hit those cultural values, you won't have to worry about what the policies say because you'll exceed what's in the policy manual. So that's one example. And then on the monitoring front, and really that was about changing my focus and our focus as an organization. I can tell you I grew up in an older school leadership of do as I say, not as I do. And really it's about changing the focus on what's being done right, not catching people do what's wrong. An example of that is our internal affairs. When there was an issue, we jumped to conclusions. Oh, I can see how that went wrong, and think that we knew. Now the focus is help me understand how this happened, because I would submit to you, rational people make rational decisions. They come to work to do a good job. So it's understanding their perspective. And the first place we look is, did we set them up for success? And it doesn't really matter whether we hit a garage door, made a medication error, had a motor vehicle accident, or it's a complaint, right? Did we set them up with the tools to be successful? And again, it doesn't mean that we don't address issues. It's how we approach the issue, right? Amber's 3-to-1 example, 3 on the positive side to 1 on the negative side. Doesn't mean we won't ask questions and get to the bottom of issues, but let's start with the fact that people were acting rationally and that we have great employees. And it's a matter of understanding their perspective. Because if our policy doesn't give them the right information and we didn't train them on it, how can we expect them to be successful? And how can we come down on them? We need to fix our issue so we set everybody up for success. So those are a couple of quick parables to relate how this culture transition in our organization we've experienced over the past decade has gone. I'll turn it back to you, Amber.
Oh, thanks, Chief. I'm actually going to hold you here for a sec because you had a few people saying, what were those 4 C's again? Can you share them again, please?
Absolutely, and I'll put them in the chat. Character, communication, competence, and collaboration. And I'll throw my email in the chat because I'm happy to share additional information if anybody wants it.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, so here's where we're at. I have some more resources and information for you. I'm gonna grab that link for you if you want to watch a little short video on how culture works. And I have my website on here if you're curious, as well as Human Synergistics. They have a great link that you can go to and play around with the Circumplex. You can play with it in an organizational view. On the big view, you can. Oh, awesome, Nan, I see it. Thank you. I will get it to you. And then they also have it down to the leadership impact level, down to even to the individual level, because there's a whole nother layer of this that we didn't talk about today. And that's around, well, a few different layers we didn't talk about today, but how do I as a person, what is my style, and how does that fit with the culture, and how teams act under different cultural styles. There's a lot of information there. So I will get you access to that. Okay. So here's one more thought, and then I'm actually going to pass it for Q&A because I saw we had a question about competitive culture. Let's talk about that. So if you're wondering what's next for us from here, what could we do to start shifting our culture? You have a number of different options. There are a ton of 360 tools out there. Now, I'm a little biased. I love Human Synergistics tools because they give us such depth. We as consultants who have access to the information, I'm talking for the organizational culture inventory, that one all the way on the right. I get like a 200-page document full of data, diving in really deeply in your organization. So, and then we talk about teams. There's leadership impact. That's what we were talking about today. There's another layer down talking about management impact. So your mid-level folks, how they impact the culture. Their role is different, right? So we have a different assessment for them. Regardless of what you're going to use, though, it's about getting a clear view of where you're at. You got to know where you're at before you can start to shift and go where you want to go. You can start shifting now, but your efforts might be wasted because you might not be moving in the right direction. So with that, I love the comments around BJ, your four C's. Lots of comments around that. That's great. Now we had a question I'll see in the chat here. How do we change a competitive work culture and get staff to work more collaboratively? Thank you, Julian. So Julian, here's what I would suggest. Number one, you have to know, what are we competitive about? What do we collaborate around? And what do we compete around? Getting really clear on that. Maybe we compete around everything, I don't know. But at least to pick these out and say, we are really competitive with each other in these areas. And then it's about why. Why are we competitive with each other in these areas? What is driving these behaviors? What's reinforcing? You got to start to look at the structures around that competitive work environment. So, let's take an example. If we talk about how quickly we respond to a call, right? How many minutes it takes you, and this crew versus that crew, and when we get down to this really competitive edge, well, what is driving why we are so competitive about how quickly is it because it's just important? It's just important that we get to the call so quickly. If that's the case, then that might not be bad. But if it is, well, we compete because we want to be better than the other crew, and we don't like them, and we need to get the resources and show that we're the best here. I'm really being facetious here, but you get the point, right? We need to get all the resources and have the great reputation, and we don't want to lose anything that's ours. When it gets to those levels, then that gets in the way of collaboration. So get a clear view of what you compete around, why you compete, and how is it reinforced? Are people rewarded for competing with each other? And now you have to start changing those structures. I see another question here about what are your thoughts on climate surveys? They're helpful. They're very helpful, right? They're a piece of the puzzle. And actually, what Human Synergistics has is, you saw the Circumplex, that's about culture. They actually have a climate survey that fits into that. That's the 200 pages. Actually, the culture part is maybe a third of that, maybe less. The rest is climate. And climate surveys are going to give us a really clear view of where we are right now and some of the low-hanging fruit that we can start to deploy in order to change culture faster. You heard me say at the beginning that culture is generally 8 to 15 years old. And for a lot of people, when we say that, they get really freaked out. And they say, what are you telling me, Amber? It's going to take 8 to 15 years to change my culture? It's like, well, no, not necessarily. Maybe something that is extremely deep is going to take you quite a bit of time. But if you are putting in the focus and intention into your culture change, and as a leadership group, you are working hard to become more constructive in the way that you lead and how you work with each other, it's going to change how the organization runs. And the low-hanging fruit is how we do really quick changes. That's what we get from climate. What is it that is really irking people right now that we can start to change and shift quickly in order to show, one, we're serious about changing and shifting this culture, and two, there's ways that we can do it, and we have to start working together, start shifting some of those things. So that's my thought on that one. I'm wondering, BJ, if you're seeing anything else, anything in the chat.
No, I think we hit all the questions. It was just the only question is that link for how culture works, the video link that you did on public safety culture, where to find that.
Yes, I will get that to you guys. I just need to pull it up for you. So I'm wondering though, if anybody has, I will put that in. Does anybody have more questions? Okay.
Not seeing
How
anymore.
about, okay, not seeing anymore. All right. I want to give you a second. Please put this in the chat. What's one thing that you're taking away from the session today?
One more question for you, Amber, while they're doing that is, what is a good strategy to improve culture when the overall leader does not support the more people-centered view?
Ooh, well, when the overall leader does not support a more people-centered view, that's tough. That's tough because they set a lot of the direction. Oh, the 4 C's. Thanks, Terry. I like that. They set a lot of the direction for the organization. But here's the thing. The top leader, the overall leader, is not the only person running that organization. Culture is we each, all of us, have a part to play in culture. And we reinforce it by how we do things. Now, a large group of employees, let's say, you get enough people interested in changing things, they can start to choose to behave and act differently, and to have different expectations of each other, and start to shift their own culture in, say, their small group. We didn't talk today about subcultures. There's cliques all over your organization, I would bet. And they each have their own little subcultures. And maybe this crew has that subculture in that one. Well, they can decide to have a really constructive subculture. And if they get enough people on board, that starts to grow. And then the people that aren't enjoying that leave eventually. So, and I get that can be easier said than done. And it's just remember that we each have our own part to play, and we can choose to have constructive impact expectations. So and I'm hearing this one, Gregory, it may be too long of a question. How do you address clashing cultures within a single organization, labor versus admin? Yes. Oh my goodness. I hear you there. Okay. So labor versus admin. This is a big question, and that's okay. It is about getting clear with each other about what you expect. You have to start with those uncomfortable conversations. When we have a lot of lack of clarity, let's say, a lot of competing messages, it doesn't help any of us. Back and forth. We need to come to the table together. And I know, again, easier said than done at times when we talk labor versus admin. But you have to be able to come to the table and have a conversation and start to find out. And here's a big part of this is being open to what the other side has to say, being open to hearing their message. And I'm talking both and. I'm talking labor, you got to hear what admin has to say, and admin, you got to hear what labor has to say. Because is there some common ground here? Maybe we're talking about the substance of different things, but is there a common ground item underneath that we can unite around and start shifting together? Because I would bet labor also wants a constructive culture. It just might not be coming out in the ways that we expect. And same back and forth. So that's a big question, and I get that. But okay, okay. What are some of the themes that you're seeing, BJ, in what people are taking away?
I saw a lot of the 3-to-1 ratio, about modeling, about being people-centered, do as we say, not as we do, kind of the difference between culture versus climate. So a lot of the shift to people and a little bit on kind of the strategy to get there.
Okay, great. I'm glad that was really helpful for people.
I think we're running up on time here, so.
We are. So last thing that I'll say here is I'm popping the password for that link into the chat. If it doesn't work for you, send me an email and I'll get you some instructions on how to view it. Or I would suggest trying a different browser. Sometimes Zoom recordings will not play nice with, say, is it Firefox? Some of the other browsers. So try a different type of browser and you might be able to access it easier. So how culture works 2022 ! That's the password. Use the caps where it shows, and we'll make sure that you get those links too with the handout. Thank you all so much for being here today.
Thanks, Amber. I appreciate you taking the time today. And on behalf of the Great Lakes Board of Directors, I want to thank everybody for attending. You'll receive a link with today's recording by email, along with a brief survey. Please let us know how your experience was today so that we can improve for the future. Thank you for your time and have a great day. Be safe.
Thank you all. Thank you.